talk to a lawyer about this. I need to talk to a lawyer.
Well, I could be a judge. I'm impartial.
Attorney Karl Truman can definitely...
Wednesday, usually he's here Tuesday, but he's joining us this fall a little bit on Wednesday. Good having you with us on Louisville Live this morning.
Welcome. So, sometimes I don't know where to start. There's so many questions we could throw at you, but we'll narrow it down. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on the whole situation in Fort Hood. Is this guy going to get a fair trial, or is it even possible?
Well, certainly he'll get a fair trial. I mean, as a veteran myself, and it's the military has so many protections and checks and balances in the system. Speaking more as a soldier, and not necessarily as a lawyer, because when I was in the Army, I was tanker, armor. I worked in. I was. A lot of people just assumed that I was an Army lawyer, but I was not an Army lawyer. But the Army really does have a lot of safeguards and procedural safeguards to protect rights of soldiers. And while it's pretty clear what this person did, but he still is entitled to due process under our Constitution and procedural safeguards to make sure that the proper procedures are followed, and which will happen.
But don't you think, we talked to Ricky about it, he didn't sidestep it. He says it's too early, and there'll be investigations and everything will come out. But possible links to people in Al-Qaeda, statements of radical Islamic tendencies over the past year. It sounded to me as if this major, he's innocent until he's proven guilty and everything, but he was like maybe a ticking time bomb, and is either political correctness or they didn't want to raise the Muslim issue, but someone should have seen the red flags. And, he even helped soldiers who came back. So you've been in the military. Can't someone in the chain of command catch this, or should they have caught it?
That's probably where the breakdown, in my opinion, where the breakdown was in the chain of command, because if there were peers of his that started having, and I don't think anything indicated, from what I've seen, is that nothing really indicated that he was going to set off like this. But, perhaps if there were some red flags, his chain of command, his direct commander should have sent him for some counseling. I mean, there's so many systems in place in the military, in the Army, if they use them. I just heard on the media this morning about some emails that he had done but they looked at him. The intelligence people looked at him and determined that it was consistent with what he was working on in his role as an Army psychologist, or psychiatrist rather. And so they did not raise any red flags, but they did look at it. But we don't want to be quick to judge. And this is the danger of this whole situation, is because the Army really is a diverse group. I mean, whether it's race, religion. I mean, the United States Army was, the forefront of integration. Under President Truman, ordering integration into the armed forces. And so that's one of the things that we do pride ourselves is to, everyone in the Army is green. There's no, we don't judge on race or religion. Right. And that's really an important aspect.
I think they'll sort it all out, because that's the way the military does it. But we ask Karl everything. He's workers' comp, Social Security, disability. He does accidents. You could call the Truman Law Office right now, 1-800-ACCIDENT. If you have a question for Karl, you have a need, Social Security, workers' comp, accident. He does it all. So you want to give him a call right now, or you can go to Truman Law Office. And healthcare is another big debate up. And we have a question in Louisville for one of our viewers out there who wants to raise a question about health care. As you know, the House, we talked about Ricky just a few minutes ago. This is from Dara in Louisville. What does Mr. Truman think of the health care debate? Will it hurt my benefits? I am 74 and on a fixed income. I like Mr. Truman and what he says. Well, thank you for liking Mr. Truman. Thank you very much. So what about the health care debate? Will this affect someone who's 74 with Medicaid, with all the Medicare, Medicaid, all that debate?
No, with Medicare, it's not going to affect at all. The issue that concerns me more in the health care debate is all the talk about trying to get into medical malpractice reform and trying to say, well, in order to keep medical costs down, we should limit your ability to recover for a medical mistake. And that's wrong. Because there's no study, actually all the studies have shown that the medical malpractice to try to limit lawsuits or to put caps on damages and say, well, if a doctor cuts off the wrong leg, you should only recover X amount of dollars. That takes it out of the jury system, which is, I think, one of our prized institutions of our country, and puts it in the hands of these same politicians to arbitrarily say your life or your husband's, your wife's, or your child's life is only worth X amount of dollars, and it doesn't matter how bad how egregious it is. Every study has shown that does not affect cost of health insurance, cost of health care. And people want to talk about defensive medicine. Well, if it's my child and there's another test that they could run that costs another $100 that may find something else, I want them to do it.
Well, that's the reason Carl is here, because he answers all the questions. We have an H1N1 question from Susan in Louisville, and I know this is an interesting one.
I'm wound up about, everybody's wound up about H1N1. It makes me very nervous. Do I get the shot or not? So Susan in Louisville says, I am a waitress and I got sick at work with the flu. I took 2 paid sick days. I was out for 5 days. I did not get back for the other 3. My boss says if I get sick again, he'll fire me. Can he do that?
Whew.
And that's a tough question, because first of all, she has to look at under what's called the Family Medical Leave Act, which provides up to 12 weeks of unpaid medical leave, but there are some restrictions on that. You have to have worked there for a year. So if you're a new employee and you get hurt, then you may not be protected under the Family Medical Leave Act. But otherwise, an employment in both Indiana and Kentucky is what's called employment at will, where an employer can fire you for any reason or no reason at all, unless you have some sort of employment contract. But in most situations, if one of my employees shows up and I just say, I don't like you anymore, leave, I can legally do that. Is it morally right? Is it ethically right? I don't think so, but can I legally do that? Yes.
All right. Well, that's why he's Karl Truman, and he's here every week answering your questions. Of course, if you have a question, anything legal related, you've been in an accident, you can email us. You can email Karl, and you can call Karl right now, 1-800-ACCIDENT. We're good having you with us here on Louisville Live this morning. Thanks for your input on the national issues, because you bring a different perspective to it, too.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Karl.